I'm recording. Thank you.
All right. Ask me anything.
So my first question is, I think I would just like you to give me insight on what you yourself have done so far in the autonomous vehicle industry, just so I can have some context behind this interview, if that would be okay.
Okay. Sure. So I have owned a racing team for many years, a human-driven racing team, and raced in the Baja 1000 and the Porsche Cup cars in the Grand Am series, and everything else has been in the nebulous area of cannonball records and set records in the internal combustion class, three-wheeled, open-wheeled, convertible, across the United States and Europe. Our team set the electric vehicle record in a Tesla 3 times, and the first, to the best of my knowledge, the level 2 automation record using Tesla Autopilot in 2019, I think. And most recently set the first Tesla full self-driving cannonball record in a Tesla Model S. And worked in autonomous vehicles for 4 years as an executive for Argo AI, which was a competitor to Waymo and Cruise and Motional. And since then have launched a venture capital fund investing in robotics and artificial intelligence and autonomy, and operate a podcast called the Autonocast, which is the most popular podcast for investors, leaders, and founders of autonomous vehicle companies and electric vehicle companies too. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. So what do you think are the net positives of autonomous vehicles on the road?
Technological progress is inevitable. It's only a question of time. And so inevitably, autonomous vehicles will be safer than the average human driver in most daily driving scenarios. Things like whether or not an autonomous vehicle could ever beat a human driver on a racetrack more questionable, but we know that like a chess, an AI can beat a human at chess, but not 100% of the time. Like the very best chess players can beat an AI chess computer. And that'll be true also of autonomous vehicles racing humans. But overall, autonomous vehicles will be better than humans in every way that matters to the average person. At some point, they will also, alleviate traffic to some degree, not eliminate. They will mitigate it because it'll be possible to manage traffic patterns and flows, in cities where right now it's kind of chaotic. And potentially at some point, maybe there may be some benefits in terms of energy efficiency, but that's further down the road.
Yeah.
The economic cost of car crashes and in both like injuries and damage and of course traffic slowdowns, I wouldn't say it's incalculable because I have seen calculations, but it is so vast that I don't think we can conceive of a world in which we actually eliminate those problems. And that's a fantastic second order consequence and advantage for autonomous vehicles.
Okay. And so you've named all these benefits, right? But I think right now, as I can see, at least what I've seen, there's a lot of uncertainty that people have when it comes to autonomous vehicles. And do you have any insight on why this might be? Why do people have this negative view towards them?
So there's a wonderful Twitter account called Pessimist Archive.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I have not. I don't have Twitter. I just have
right,
Instagram.
I highly recommend you check. They have a website called pessimistarchive.org.
Okay.
But so Pessimist Archive is an archive by a guy named Louis Anslow, who every day posts a news story from like the 1800s or 1900s, And the news stories of moral panic and objections to technologies we take for granted today, but at the time were considered controversial. So bicycles. Bicycles will lead women to distractions. They'll not want to do their jobs as housemakers and moms. Bicycles must not be allowed to be in the hands of women. Trains will cause brain damage. They move too fast. The human brain is not meant to move that fast. Elevators, altitude, all bad for humans. I mean, the printing press, everybody at the time, or there were a lot of objections to technologies at every phase of human history, and none of them turned out to be true. Pagers, like bad. Jazz music, bad. I mean, recording music, bad. I mean, you can just go down the list. It's funny to look back in time. So, in the modern world, there's an additional dimension, which is because of the speed of media and anyone can post on socials, the ability for skeptics, critics, and ignorant people to object to something there's no bar. Anyone can have an opinion that sucks or that's negative, and they can just throw it out there. As a result, skepticism has is easier to propagate and drowns out optimism. Now, a lot of tech companies who invest in new things like autonomous vehicles, to raise money, need to generate excitement. So they make very ambitious, overly optimistic, and ambitious claims about when it's going to work. And it's very easy to knock down those claims and for skeptics to kind of make fun of them. As a result, the negativity around things that are valid but propagate more slowly than we would wish takes hold. A great example of this would be autonomous vehicles. So Elon Musk says 10 years ago-ish, full self-driving, 6 months, 3 months, probably 6 months, definitely, 10 years ago. And so that quote is then applied to all autonomous vehicles. Set aside that Tesla is not there yet. Waymo is there, but they're only there in a couple of cities. So the skeptics take what Elon Musk said, apply it to everyone, and then say, well, if Tesla's not there and Waymo... Hang on a second.
No, it's okay.
If Tesla's not there, I'm getting my hair brushed by a young child. If Tesla's not there and Waymo's not really there, it must suck, it can never work. But the reality is that everyone but Tesla said all along it was going to take a long time. It wasn't going to work everywhere all at once. Therefore, we should not be held to promises that someone else made. And so the promises Musk has made have been applied to everybody, and unfairly so. Same thing goes for safety promises. So people, if someone says self-driving cars will solve car crashes, and a self-driving car then has a minor incident, well, if you realistically understood that it would take decades for autonomous vehicles to get to zero crashes or few, and then you would not hold one minor incident that occurs now against the promise of what will happen later. So this is a completely unrealistic expectation, partially set by people who've overpromised from the sector, and then exploited by people who just have an agenda or don't want to believe progress is possible. And that those unrealistic expectations are held against the successful companies, which is absurd. There are people who said we would never get to the moon, planes would never fly, commercial aviation would never be affordable for the masses. None of those things were true. And so it is important when looking at optimistic promises and pessimistic, deeply pessimistic statements and skeptics to ignore or look at where they're coming from, why they said those things, and the actual reality on the ground. So the arc of history is actually not an arc. Like the line of progress for all human achievement it's a line up and to the right. But around that line, there's oscillation. The oscillation is what is the center of gravity of the discourse around that technology at any given time. So if self-driving cars are up and to the right, well, it's like Musk says they'll be here any minute. A year later, they're not. And so the center of gravity moves to the negative. Oh, it can never work. Waymo deploys. Oh my God, it's almost here. That doesn't work everywhere. And it goes negative again. And so reality is never as clear as the, overwhelming optimists or pessimists would ever make it out to be. And you have to remove the first layer of data you see from the media, remove that or ignore it, and then look at actual events on the ground to assemble a picture of how history is unfolding.
Okay. Thank you. And I know, so my next question would be, what steps need to be taken further for autonomous vehicle integration?
Well, I think I'll happy to answer that, but I think another question that's worth answering is, what are the negative consequences?
Yeah, that was actually a question,
It's a very important question. So, and this is, no one talks about this. So, it is really important, and this is true of all humans, because human nature, we want to control, we want to first own the tools we use, and then not just own them, we want to be in complete control of them. So, a dishwasher, most people own a dishwasher today, and we control it completely. There's no possibility that we wouldn't. And if a dishwasher breaks, cleaning a dish is pretty easy. Just pull it out. It's fine. Autonomous vehicles are different because the United States has the best, the maximalist example of a country built by people who first used horses and trains, then cars. We don't have a culture, society based around walking or mass transit the way the Europeans do, much of Asia. We're a car-centric nation. So imagine a world where autonomous vehicles were deployed according to how the early champions said they would be. They said they'd all be connected, they'd all be shared, they'd all be electric, they'd all be autonomous. So, first of all, connectivity isn't necessarily a good thing. We actually don't want to be connected all the time because we want some privacy. That Americans more so than anyone else. That's number one. Number two, do they have to be electric? I mean, electrification is good in a lot of ways, but they don't have to be electric. Mm-hmm. And then this is the big one: shared. Most Americans don't want to share their cars. They don't. They don't want to ride on buses. They don't want to ride on trains. Although if you live in New York City, trains are the best. I love living. It's awesome. So, but the last one, the autonomous one, is if a vehicle could be autonomous 100% of the time, and you can't remove the steering wheel, should we? Because eventually, an autonomous vehicle will break, like a dishwasher. But we can survive without dishwashers. But if autonomous vehicles don't have steering wheels and they don't work on one day or 10 days a year, and people no longer know how to drive, or they can't because there's no steering wheel, that's a major problem. That's a freedom reduction problem. And so I think that there's been a lot of, not just overpromising about when EVs will arrive, but there's been a lot of very unrealistic promises around human nature, but especially American nature, which is around not just our freedoms, but also our agency, our autonomy. The word autonomy means freedom. It doesn't actually mean robotic or automated. It means freedom. So the autonomous vehicle isn't about the autonomy of the vehicle. It's about the autonomy of the owner or the user. And so in my perfect world, every vehicle has autonomous capability. But the ones we own, steering wheel. Because if they don't work, or during the transition to when they work everywhere, they don't work everywhere. They need to be dual mode. Means, so I own a vehicle. The perfect sports car is what I own. It's autonomous when I want it to be in traffic, but when I want to have fun with it, I drive it. And while I'm driving, the same logic which would drive it autonomously would prevent me from crashing it while I'm driving it really fast. So a Mustang or a Porsche or whatever, I'm taking it on a mountain road. It takes me out of the city autonomously. I get to the mountain road. I'm driving the hell out. But if I reach a point in how I'm driving it where it could go off a cliff or hit some kids, it won't let me. that's the perfect car. And if all the automation fails, everything else still works. And that's why I'm opposed to mandating vehicles that never have a steering wheel again, that are autonomy only, unless they are specifically deployed for like urban mass transit or some other shared scenario. But I think people, Americans more than anyone else, will always want to have that choice. And so I like to use political language for what I hope is not a political statement, but there is a war on driving. There are people who don't want us to drive, and I'm pro-choice in that war. I think people will want a choice, and that needs to be protected.
Yeah. So, can I clarify? So, you yourself would like the idea of full autonomy, but you would still like everyone to have the option to drive. You think eliminating things like steering wheels would be wrong. Yeah.
If somebody wants to buy a car without a steering wheel, let them.
Yeah.
But of course, on the day it doesn't work, I mean, there's no such thing as technology that works 100% of the time. There's never been a technology that works 100% of the time.
Yeah. The
more complex technology is, the more likely it will have a failure at some point. And as a result, there needs to be a backup option. So if you want to buy a car that's autonomous only, no steering wheel, and it goes down, you can't get to work that day. Well, that's on you. I'll never be in that scenario. Okay. Growing up as a New Yorker, when the subway doesn't work, you take a bus. It's going to be slower, but if it's going really far, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But it happens. There's floods, there's hurricanes, things happen, and the fires in California. Imagine that all those vehicles were autonomous.
Yeah.
Fire crosses the road. Well, somebody who had a steering wheel could just drive and say, the fire's not that bad yet. I can drive through that. I can make it.
Yeah.
But it's quite likely autonomous vehicles will not make that calculation. They'll say, I'm just not driving through that fire. And now you're on foot. Some people will survive that. Some won't. I do not want to leave my safety of myself or my family to an external thing like that. I'd like to have the choice. And, that runs real deep for me because my parents were refugees from World War II. And my dad's side of the family survived because they had access to a car that they could start. And imagine that scenario today.
Yeah.
You want to get out of a city. There's been a fire. There's been something. You don't have a car. You don't own the car. And the autonomous vehicles, the wait times are too long, or they show up and they're just not going to drive through the smoke because they can't see through it. I'll never be in that scenario.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think that's all my questions.
But your other question was how should they propagate?
Yeah.
What should happen?
Yeah.
So, anything that moves in public that could hurt people should be regulated in some way. I can't think of a sector that shouldn't have some regulation. But not at this point. It's really important that it be minimal and wise. So the states like Florida and Arizona have been really open to autonomous vehicle testing, and states like New York have been really difficult about it. That needs to change. There needs to be harmonization of laws. There needs to be federal law on this because the United States is supposed to be the most innovative, forward-thinking, creative country in the world, and we are competing against countries like China. For 100 years, American exports were the thing which drove our economy. If we allow a country like China to dominate exports of autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles, and we're giving away an enormous and very powerful economic engine that makes Americans prosperous. We need to be the country that's developing, manufacturing, and exporting these technologies. And so only a federal regulatory framework that makes it easier for American companies to test and develop makes any sense here. Obviously, there are 50 states, but we can't have the states competing to slow down progress. They need to be competing to increase the rate of progress here. And, it's incredible to me how human psychology and the media amplify the worst aspects of human psychology. Because 100 people are killed a day on American roads in crashes. Most of them are single car crashes. And it's rarely a front page story unless multiple people are killed. And yet, if an autonomous vehicle is a minor incident and no one's hurt, or someone is hurt a little bit, the headlines are it can never work, and we should slow this down. This is as insane as someone getting bitten by a shark, and then people getting obsessed with shark bites. Mosquitoes kill orders of magnitude more people than sharks do, and yet nobody talks. When's the last time you saw a mosquito headlines? It's just not, doesn't grab the attention. And so we need to be realistic about our expectations, and also honest about goals. If we overregulate, we're not going to be the country that we want to be.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Okay.
Actually, one more comment on that is, if we wanted to make roads safer, just safer and nothing else, just make driver's license requirements 10 times harder.
Yeah.
But there's no political will for that, and so here we are.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.